And I was then beginning to ask myself, now, instead of just writing, should I begin to try to say something worthwhile? And then, of course, you have to go through the agony of thinking exactly what should I say, what is worthwhile saying.
Welcome to another show. Today I want to discuss one of my favorite novels, Out of Their Minds by Clifford D. Simak. Before we look at this novel, let's look at the man himself. Clifford Donald Simak was born on August 3, 1904, and passed away on April 25, 1988, which incidentally was my birthday. Well, I was born in 62, but April 25th is my birthday. He was 83 years old. Simak was an American science fiction writer. He won 3 Hugo Awards and 1 Nebula Award. The Science Fiction Writers of America made him its 3rd SFWA Grand Master, and the Horror Writers Association made him one of 3 inaugural winners of the Bram Stoker Award for Lifetime Achievement. He is associated with the pastoral science fiction subgenre. Simak was born in Millville, Wisconsin in 1904, the son of John Lewis and Margaret Simak. He attended the University of Wisconsin-Madison and then taught in public schools until 1929. He married Agnes Kuchenberg on April 13, 1929, and they had 2 children, Richard Dick Scott and Shelley Ellen. In his novel Time and Again, he wrote, "I have been happily married with the same woman 33 years. He dedicated the book to his wife, Kay, without whom I'd never have written a line, he said. He was well liked by many of his science fiction friends, especially Isaac Asimov. Simak became interested in science fiction after reading the works of H.G. Wells as a child. His first contribution to the literature was The World of the Red Sun, published by Hugo Gernsback in the December 1931 issue Wonder Stories. He also published a lot in astounding science fiction. His only science fiction publication between 1932 and 1938 was The Creator in Marvel Tales No. 4. This story, which had religious implications, was rare in the genre at the time. He wrote in the tradition of the earlier super science subgenre that E. Doc Smith perfected, but he soon developed his style, usually described as gentle and pastoral. During this period, Simak also published several war and western stories in pulp magazines. City, a fix-up novel based on short stories with the common theme of mankind's eventual exodus from Earth, won the International Fantasy Award. Many of his aliens have a dry, otherworldly sense of humor, and others are unintentionally amusing in their speech, behavior, or appearance. His robots and dogs are full of personality. By contrast, his heroes are seafers. His protagonists are often boring men, never described and never reappearing. One of Simak's editors objected to his stories because his heroes were losers, to which Simak replied, "I like losers." From 1950 to 1986, Clifford Simak wrote more than 30 novels and 4 nonfiction works, with Waystation winning the 1964 Hugo Award. More than 100 of his short stories were published from 1931 to 1981 in the science fiction, western, and war genres, with The Big Front Yard winning the 1959 Hugo Award for Best Novelette and Grotto of the Dancing Deer winning the Hugo and Nebula Awards for Best Short Story in 1981.
That every writer evolves. I don't think this is unique with myself. You're not the same man you were a year ago or 5 years ago. There's a continual intellectual ferment going on. I think there is, I hope there is. When it ceases, why, a person is no longer a writer.
The Megazoid. What are you talking about? Are you drunk? But the Megazoid... Forget it, will you? Let's not have any more talk about Megazoid.
One of his short stories, Goodnight, Mr. James, was adapted as the Duplicate Man on the Outer Limits in 1964. Simak notes, "This is a vicious story, so vicious that it is the only one of my stories adapted to television." The Science Fiction Writers of America made Simak its 3rd SFWA Grandmaster in 1977 after Robert Heinlein and Jack Williamson. He has won numerous awards, including Hugos and a Lifetime Achievement Bram Stoker Award. Other works adapted into film include Immigrant and Target Generation, which were adapted into the British anthology series Out of This World. Beachhead and Target Generation were adapted into the British anthology series Out of the Unknown. These episodes are believed to be lost.
The world most of us knew was destroyed in 1952. because that was the year when paperback publishing got into science fiction and began taking it over, and it made one hell of a difference.
Jonathan Frakes of Star Trek The Next Generation did an audio tape of Over the River and Through the Woods. Now let's look at the novel in question.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll take it from here. Hoping to write his book in quiet and seclusion, Horton Smith has returned home to Pilot Knob. Here, in the tiny village where he passed so many carefree childhood years, he is untroubled by the pressures of the big city and can freely answer the call of his muse. Of course, Horton didn't have to run from dinosaurs back to the town. No cartoon hillbillies were offering him moonshine. Don Quixote was content to confine himself to the pages of a book, and the devil himself was not on Horton's tail. Something very, very unusual is going on in Pilot Knob, and Horton Smith is determined to get to the bottom of it if his imagination doesn't kill him first. And Out of Their Minds, science fiction grandmaster Clifford D. Simak changes gears, treating his readers to a delightfully satiric flight of fancy and fantasy. An award-winning author renowned for his remarkable visions of the future, Simak brings creatures and characters from humankind's imagination to breathtaking life in this fast-moving and unforgettable tale. Now, back to you, Kevin.
Let's take a brief look at the novel now. I'm sorry to trouble you, I said, but I'm stuck just down the road, and I would guess that I'm lost as well. These here be tangly roads, said the man. For one who ain't used to them, they wind about a lot, and some of them aren't going nowhere. Where might you be headed, stranger? Pilot Knob, I said. He nodded sagely. You took the wrong turning just down the road a piece. I was wondering, I said, if you could hitch up a horse and pull me back onto the road. The car skidded and my back wheels went into the ditch. I'll be more than willing to pay you for your trouble. Here, stranger, sit, he said, pulling a chair out from the table. We're just about to eat, and there's enough for three, and we'd be proud to have you join us. But the car, I reminded him. I'm in something of a hurry. He shook his head. Can't be done, not tonight at least. The horses ain't in the barn. They're out in the pasture somewhere, probably up atop the hill. Couldn't pay me enough. No one could to go out hunting them, and with it about to rain, and the rattlesnakes. But rattlesnakes, I said, somewhat foolishly and to no great point, aren't out at night. Let me tell you, son, he said. No one ever rightly knows about rattlesnakes. I forgot myself, I said. My name is Horton Smith. I was getting tired of his calling me son and stranger. The woman turned from the stove, a big fork held in her hand. Smith, she said, excited. Why, that's our name, too. Could it be that you are kin? No, Ma, said the man. There's a passel of Smiths. Just because a man's name is Smith don't signify that he be related to us. But, he said, it seems to me that this fortunate similarity of names might call for a snort. Out of Their Minds is one of my favorite novels of all time, and one of Simak's works. Out of their minds and the force of their imagination, men have created countless beings, from demons and monsters of legend to comic strip characters. What if their world were real? If dragons and devils and Don Quixote hobnobbed with Dagwood Bumstead and Charlie Brown? Such a world would have its fascinations and its dreadful perils. If it existed, Horton Smith found out that it did, and that he was right in the middle of it. As with the other Clifford D. Simak books I've read, the ideas behind the story are ingenious strokes of miracles on the page. They are the ideas that you've almost thought of, never fully realized, only understanding this when confronted with a book like Out of Their Minds. In Out of Your Minds, Simak is playing with the idea that man's imagination is rebelling against him, that we've created beings as we imagine them from our fears and fancies, our comic strips and bumps in the night, and one day they all rebel and retaliate. Horton Smith is the protagonist. Not much is revealed about him, which plays into the book's final act and explains why he is at the Maelstrom's center. So here's the thing. The ideas are great and enjoyable, but I have trouble following Simak's plot pacing choices. We spend a lot of time hanging out at a cave at the beginning, and by the end, I feel like he's rushing things a little. Many of Simak's endings seemed rushed to me. But that doesn't mean that the book is terrible, it just means that he should concentrate more on how it will finish. If I were to cast Horton Smith in a movie, let's say in the early 70s when the book came out, I would cast someone like Dustin Hoffman, who wasn't yet a superstar, but his star was rising, and he could tackle dramatic and comedic roles, and has an everyman quality. If I were to cast the role today, it would probably not be a leading man like Tom Cruise, but more an everyman like Jason Sudeikis. Again, not incredibly well known, but with that everyman quality. Even though his roles are more comedic, he still has the dramatic flair needed to pull it off. That's my take on Out of Their Minds, a great novel that should be made into a movie. What do you think? Have you read Out of Their Minds? Any other of Simak's stories? Did you think it was one of the best or worst? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, I'd be honored if you subscribe to my channel. Check out my Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter franchise also in the comments. Until next time, this is Kevin Gibbon saying live long and prosper. May the force be with you, and keep reaching for the stars.